to our show, Cultivate Weekly. Today, we're going to be talking about starting over and what it might look like if you are starting a brand new account, starting a brand new business, all of those things, and what would creating your social media plan, strategy, all of the things potentially look like, some things that you can take into account. And even if you already have an account, these may be some great tips for you to be able to implement some of them now. So, my name is Elizabeth Doss, and I am a social media content creator and social media manager. But I also help brands and businesses with animated GIFs, motion graphic design, and how to create their own library of reactions to use across social to be able to interact with their communities, bring joy, all the things. So I'm going to hand things over to you, Steph, to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started on starting over.
Yeah, exactly. Well, good morning and hello to everyone joining us here live or watching on the replays. I'm Stephanie Gillis-Polgard. I'm the brand architect behind Take Roots Consulting, and I help brands, businesses, entrepreneurs really dive into what it looks like from a brand storytelling perspective using both those traditional media outlets like the news releases, the all of the other stuff, the media pieces, but also now the more fun, and it's been around forever, not going anywhere, social media kind of land where we can lean in and wait now for free and get those brands and businesses talking and driving conversation. So when we talked about, Elizabeth, what was the topic or the theme today going to be, this one hit me because we do a lot of talking about how to use the platforms, what are the tips and the tricks to engage. But if we bring it all back to if that moment where we got the chance to do it all over again, what might be different? What might you, from your learnings, you lean into a little bit more? But then what are those things that, dang it, as you keep reminding me, when we think about a new account and how the different platforms are working, some of this stuff is basic, regardless of which platform you decide to lean into most. And I don't think it's going to come as a big shocker to people, but if you were to kickstart even today, your existing account and want to do things differently or start up a new one, get super clear. And I mean crystal clear on your why before you start talking about the what. And what does that mean? It's really, instead of just posting to keep the feed active, build around this sense of purpose, this intentionality of, people say they want to build community. So then think about what it looks like and feels like to truly build community. And what is selling? Selling without selling. You don't always need to be throwing it up about what's the product and service all the time, but you do need to be showing up in a way that's intentional and purposeful so that people know who you are and why they might want to work with you. So claim your authority. If you want to position yourself as a key opinion or a key thought leader, start it out strong and position yourself that way. And obviously, somebody who's in PR and marketing, it is about that storytelling component. And we want to remember to keep it fun because people do business with people and they need to get a sense of who you are to decide if you are, in fact, the person or the organization, the brand, the company that should be working with them. So that's a good kickoff. Remember the why. Start with the why always before the what.
And because there are going to be days where you don't feel like it. And you need to be able to tap back into the this is why I'm doing this moment. Moment. Just give yourself that little bit of yes, you can do this. There's reasons why you wanted to do this to begin with, so you can make it through. So I do love that getting clear on that. One of the other things I was thinking about, Steph, because one of the reasons that this topic has come up for me is in the last couple of weeks, I've had a lady at my church approach me, a family member approach me, and ask me some tips about starting a brand new social media account, starting a business. And so a little bit like, you're a little like, whoa, okay, that's a lot. But but so I was thinking along these lines of if you were starting fresh. And one thing that you really want to take into consideration is because of course you would love to be on all the platforms. But if you're a one stop shop, one person type thing, it's really smart for you to get very strategic about where you're going to show up first. So, for instance, the lady from my church, she's wanting to do create a product but only selling it locally. So it while yes, it would be great at some point if she wanted to do an Instagram or she wanted to do something like that. She already knows how to use Facebook, and there's so many localizing features on Facebook itself. So my point in this is thinking about where does the audience that you want to connect with, where do they hang out? Where do they live, you know? And so for her, being able to do local marketplace, working with her friends, people that already know her, those type of things is going to be really beneficial for the business that she's trying to start. And so that was one place that we were looking at. But for you, you might want to reach a broader audience if you're out in the world. If you're because she doesn't want to do shipping. She's like, I don't want to stand in line at the post office. Got it. Got it. Um, and so if you don't want to ship all over the world, then feel free to get localized. But if you're looking at doing business if you're creating a product and selling direct to a consumer, great places to be found, potentially on Instagram, on TikTok, etc. Like just places that people can find what you're doing and get to know you and the product and the service. Those are great places for it. But if you are a business selling to businesses, guys, you need to be on LinkedIn. That's just the way that the cookie crumbles in networking. And I know like people get weird about LinkedIn for some reason stuff. They're like, no, this is just where my resume lives. And that's simply not true. There are connections to be made, networking to be had, and also just being able to show up in communities where you're wanting to be known for or whatever, making those connections on this side. Because I've gotten some great business from LinkedIn, which business is business to business type thing. But one, start to recognize you're not necessarily selling to everyone. Try to get down smaller and smaller to who you might be selling to, and find out what platforms they're hanging out on and what's easiest for them to access you. So I'll hand things back to you, Steph.
Well, I love that. I love that notion of, you're not selling to everyone. And a lot of people think, well, but hey, it's social media. Like, aren't I
Mhm.
supposed to be able to reach everyone and talk to everyone? And it's all free. And you just said, like, make sure that you're clear on your why. And I want to sell to everyone. Well, the reality is, people, sorry to burst your little bubble. It's not gonna happen. But the types of things that we're talking about in this conversation, again, whether you're really wanting to start fresh and open up a new account or start on a new platform, these are opportunities to get that clarity around that why before the what. But also, and Elizabeth, you remind me of this a lot when we talk about the building for conversations and not just content. And I wanted to throw it back to you because it's part of that storytelling component that you do so well within GIF and allowing us to build for conversation. You utilize GIFs to do that, but there's a couple of other things that I want to lob the ball over to you in hopes that you know where I'm trying to drive you in the notion of when we're doing social media and the storytelling piece, you are the story, but how do you bring that to life? Back
Yeah.
over to you.
Yeah, definitely. We get in our heads that I sell this. I sell jewelry. I sell candles. I sell coaching and all these things. And when we get in that mindset, we get into this sell mode. And something stuff, that we talk about is when you're watching a TV show, you're watching like the plot happen and the things happen and all these things. All of a sudden a commercial comes on. And what do we do as soon as we can? We hit skip ad. So if your channel is just ads, people are going to be skipping it. Like they're skipping the sales stuff. Like they don't want to be sold to. And this is a hard mindset sometimes to get. You almost have to I always get this wrong, Steph, every single time. It's not disembowel yourself. That's something else. But disembody, separate yourself from the thing for a while and start to get in the mindset of how do I tell the story around this product? So if I'm talking about candles, I may not be selling. I need to get out of the mindset of I'm selling candles. I need to get to the mindset of I'm providing self care. I am providing relaxation. I am providing a pause in a busy day. And how can you tell the story of what's going on that your product or service is answering that part of the story. So I always like to talk about commiseration and starting to write down what are the pain points that someone's experiencing before they come to find you or their product, and what do they experience after the fact. So I'm obviously stuck in candle mode today, but if I think about the busy mom, she's been in carpool all day, she's running to the store, she's throwing food together, she's trying to help with homework, she's just going and going and going and going, and yet her one moment to herself is when everyone's in bed. She draws the bath, she lights the candles, she puts on her audiobook, she is in the bubble bath, like the whole thing. This is her moment of chill. And your product could be positioned as a hero in the moment of chill, that she knows that as soon as she lights that candle, all bets are off. Like she's done for the day. This is her moment. And then telling the story that we may not be able to fix all the other problems, but we'll be here for you in this moment when you need a breather. And so getting out of the mindset of I'm selling this to I'm doing that. Like let's take the jewelry side for a second. When you're giving a gift of jewelry, you're commemorating a moment, you're bringing back nostalgia or a memory of something. It's a talisman that marks this moment in time for future and for past and all these things. And so if you can build that into that moment, James said this, I think a couple we were talking about. He's like, anytime there's a company that can make a guy look really good, like he remembered, then he's like, they'll keep coming back to that company, to say, hey, you helped this mean more than it just a surface level present. You helped me get to the story behind it for us. So when you're giving a gift, it can do that. So how can you kind of tell those stories? I hope that was a little bit about maybe what you were, but feel free to
It
change it.
was, it was. And at the end of the day, I think the message is, start with the storytelling as the baseline, which leads me almost into, it's like a perfect little segue, a little bit of a shout out to our friend Richard, but I hope he appreciates this. Batch the boring and free up the magic is
Yeah.
kind of how I'm
Yeah.
positioning this one. And what I mean by batch the boring, it's batching or automating, templating out those necessary pieces of content that you need to have as part of your overall strategy, right? So things like reminders or promos that are coming up, or FAQs that we often talk about as being evergreen content. So that's that everyday stuff that is part of your business, you need to push out there. So yes, batch the boring and free up the magic. And so you save your creative energy, literally save it all, whether you're using Canva or you're an absolute genius when it comes to design like Elizabeth, but you're saving that creative energy for the posts that, dare I say, punch above your weight level, right? So they might be the rants, they might be the hot takes, they might be those clever carousels, or the moments that really feel vulnerable but important to share. And I think if people wrap their mind around that, also it gets you ahead of the game. So many times when I'm working with clients on building a social media strategy or what their content's going to look like, even sometimes the thought of creating content for a month, right? So we've kicked off September, we're coming into that last bit of the year, and they're like, well, I can't think about like the entire month of September, I just need to focus on the week. Okay, fine. But if you think about those necessary pieces of content and you put in some automation, because thank you LinkedIn, thank you Instagram or Meta with Facebook and everything, you're able to schedule some of those pieces of content that you know you're going to use anyway and that it's a required piece. And so now all of a sudden you're building in this longevity, you're building in more time to brain power to use those creative juices to get into the meatier bits of the content. And I'm a big fan of apps or like Canva. I have it on my phone, use it daily, dare I say, but also leaning into the platforms that have like edits we've talked about before, Instagram coming out with edits, being able to utilize that stuff. You don't need to be a full creative, a full-time designer to be able to show up, do that batch content, set aside that time so you get that part of your business taken care of, but that you can keep that creative juice going so you don't burn out on the stuff that's really meaty, really intentional to position yourself as somebody that people want to work with or have a product that people want to have in their life. Okay, Elizabeth, back over to you. I feel like this is a topic that we could spend hours on. So 30 minutes makes it really, really difficult since we're already over the halfway point.
Yes.
But if we were to talk about algorithm, and you said
Mhm.
something to me before we went live, and I think it's a really important piece, especially for those people that are thinking, hey, this is a reset opportunity for
Yep.
me. What advice would you give them about the algorithm and training it?
Yeah, sure. So it's not so when we think about the algorithm, of course, we think about what we're posting, what the captions say, what all these things are, and that's very important. And I would highly recommend because Steph and I were talking about this, and we may do a show about this in the future. But the difference between social media and what Gary Vee and Alex Ramosi are now coining interest media. This is how the algorithm for TikTok works, and Instagram is now doing it as well. That it's like, if you liked this, then let's file this other thing underneath and keep feeding you these things that you like, and you'll stay on the platform. What's good about that is you can start to look at other content creators in your market, in your niche, and realize that if you see the ones that are performing well for them, you can repurpose that in your own voice, in your own way, and have the potential of being suggested right up beside them, because you're in that neighborhood of content. It's people being interested in this certain thing, and so you're getting to be filed in that. But one thing that I wanted to definitely point out is that it's not only the content that you create, it's the content that you consume. So when you are on social media platforms and you're wanting to build a following on a certain platform or channel that you've created, be careful not to go down the rabbit holes of curiosity of things that you just find interesting on those accounts. A lot of creators will have a separate account that they use to just follow their interests and the random things that that they're curious about. Because if you have an account that you're trying to use to target crocheters, I don't know, I'm in the craft world today, but all of a sudden you're looking up like gym exercises, and you're looking up engines for motorcycles and all of these things. All of a sudden your crocheting account, unless you are crocheting things for the gym or for your motorcycle, like, if there's a Venn diagram where it works, then that's fine. But if not, you need to separate out what you're consuming and what you're creating. So you may need to have a separate dummy account if you're just going to sit there and doom scroll on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, like, because you want to make sure that you are not only feeding the algorithm, but what you're eating from that same place. If you can keep it in that theme, especially with brand new accounts. If you're starting over, I would highly recommend that you do not use that account to surf. Does that make sense, Steph?
Oh gosh, by all means, it makes all the senses, right? It is exactly that. And if people could raise their hand, if we could see them all raising their hand right now when you ask, have you gone down that? Even if you have a personal Instagram account
Yep.
and a business, all of a sudden you're in the business account and you're looking up guilty pleasure Real Housewives. And now the feed is completely filled with that. Well,
Yep.
again, you don't want that to happen on your business account. You want to be
Right.
served up content. And that's exactly what's going to happen if you're putting it out there. Same concept. If we may, I'm going to throw out another one for you, another tip. Whether you're using today as a restart, relaunch, or you're looking to dabble into another platform, perhaps now maybe you've nailed or mastered one and it's time for you to open up another one. All right. Always keep in mind or always design with reusability in mind. So always design with
Hmm.
reusability in mind. What do I mean by that?
Yep.
So every caption, every story, every reel should kind of be built in a way that you can turn it into something else. So whether you're turning it into an email, whether you're clipping a longer piece of video into a short over on YouTube or turning it into a story, or maybe you're saving it in a collection or a little library for next year, especially if those are posts, different pieces of content that have performed super well. Let's be honest, we're served up so much content on a daily basis. People need to see this stuff over and over and over again before they probably register. Did I see that before? Is that new? And that's what's so beautiful about reusability, that you can only be on one platform at any given time. So when I think about building longevity into a piece of content, it is, well, if it's an Instagram feed post today, on the same day it might turn into an Instagram story, redirecting them back to the post that could have been a carousel with tips and tricks in it. It also could turn into a LinkedIn article or an e-blast that you send out to your subscribers. And then again, right, video content. How are we moving it around? Everything from TikTok to Instagram to Pinterest. So always try to think about reusability when you're designing. It doesn't always need to be a one and done. Sometimes it is, and sometimes that's strategic and intentional, especially around news releases or reading it, things like that. But there's pieces that you can always take to enhance, an excerpt and bring it over and give it more context to another platform. So I just want people to keep that in mind as you're building out a content strategy, whether that's for the week, the month, the year, the themes, the buckets that we often talk about, or content pillars. What is that reusability, and how can you move it across different channels at different times for different purposes? What do you
That's
think, Elizabeth?
that's awesome. So I shout out to my mom who's watching on YouTube. Because she said in what your description that you just gave, Steph, it's like a capsule wardrobe where you have these pieces that you can interchange and wear them. Can they go from day to evening? Like that whole thing. And my mom, like, she's always so well put together. She's like, anyway, you would love her stuff. But I do love that. One thing I wanted to come back to, Stephanie, and this is something we haven't talked about, gosh, in ages and ages. But so I wanted to throw it back to you. But even if you aren't going to post on all the platforms, it's still important to secure your presence. Would you mind talking about that just a little bit?
Well, I mean, I believe, and we have, you're right. We've talked about it, whether we're even dabbling. And of course, we started and we connected on Clubhouse. That was, gosh, that feels like a lifetime
Yep.
ago. And then it was, how do you secure your handle or your name over there? When we joined, it was by invite only. So, of course, it was like, before it went totally big, it was great. But there's new platforms coming up. So, whether or not you have a plan today to jump on all the things, or even the fact that I've thrown out Pinterest. Well, we haven't
Right.
spent a lot of time talking about Pinterest in Cultivate Weekly, but I can tell you that I secured my handle, probably 7+ years ago,
Mhm.
and leaned in hard to that channel, backed off a little bit, but
Right.
it's still active, it's still going. And I didn't want someone else, not that, Take Roots is like a global brand. Yes, it is. Thank you very much. But at the same time, I want to make sure that no one else can take it. So again, securing your handle or your name, whatever one you're using on the branding side, if you're thinking about it, just go ahead and grab it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And then that way it is secure for you should you down the road or later this week, or you're inspired after today's conversation to finally jump on Pinterest, because there's lots of cool things that you can do over there in repurposing content from one platform to another. Make sure that you're doing it. I'm not sure if you want to go down a little bit deeper into that conversation, Elizabeth, but it is important, by all means, to secure your handle across the platforms.
And your domain name too, if you're doing a website side of things, because you can get that for fairly cheap. Even if you don't set the website up, you can often get your domain, unless it's like something that's wild and crazy. But the the one thing I want to say is there are websites out there called Name Checker or some of these others where you can check to see if that handle is taken. Because a lot of times it may not be taken on Facebook, but it's taken everywhere else. So you can't get it on Instagram or on. So there's websites that will actually do that side for you. I think if I were going to start over, my last thing before we wrap up, if I was going to start over, I would bank content. You were talking about batching content, and even thinking through the processes of what what is the journey that the customer is going to take from the first time they get to know you to as that's building to how do they purchase, how do they receive their order, like, so walking through all the boring stuff, getting that out of the way. But this idea of going ahead and banking a month or so of content before you even hit publish, to give yourself that space of grace. And I'm not saying you don't even have to have like 30 posts. I'm not even saying you have to post every day necessarily. I mean, if you're wanting to grow, the more you post, the more eyeballs are going to see it, blah, 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 all this stuff. So, yes. But if you just want, set yourself up for success, because if you are last minute posting over, and then you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot. If you can get yourself a several posts, let's say even if we did 3 times a week, so if you can get yourself 12 to 16 posts banked, so that you can focus on engagement for that first month when you actually launch, etc. You can even have posts that are about the launch, like saying, hey, something fun is coming. Like, so you could create posts that lead up to the big reveal of the products that you're going to sell or the other stuff. But like, for instance, one of the ladies I was working with, the advice was to create so many products, like, and go ahead and photograph them, have them ready to go when they're actually going to launch their ready-made products that they're going to be selling. So anyway, just this idea of give yourself the best um, leg up when you're about to start the social media stuff. Don't just create one post and post it and then think that, like, that's not going to help you. Try to think from about more than that. So I would recommend 8 to 12 posts that you can have in stock before you even hit publish. Anyway, over to you, Steph, to
Yeah, and I
close us
think
out.
yeah, no, it's the perfect lead in to my, I mean, I have lots of thoughts on this topic,
Yeah.
but the final thought for this particular conversation goes hand in hand with what you're saying. And it's this notion of, stop chasing the algorithm, but start building the systems,
Mhm.
right? And if you build the systems, things like, keep in mind, like trends are constantly changing. That's why they're trends, like it will keep going through. So if you're chasing them, then you're going to burn out,
Yeah.
right? So again, should you play with trends? Should you
Yes.
see if that's tracking for you? Can you do that A/B type testing? Of course, you can do all of the things. You can do the dance moves, and have fun with it, right? Because that brings out the personality on the trend side. But instead, if you start building a system and you take a few post types that work, kind of like you're talking about, right? The tips, the reels, the memes, the behind the scenes, the stories, and then you rotate through them. Now you've come up with your batch of your 8 to 12 kind of in that little library. So reusability, going back to what I said before, design with reusability in mind. So, but you're building the system at the same time, so that consistency compounds way faster than just chasing virality, which again, the feeling of going viral, it might feel good in the moment, but I want to always remind you that if you can't show up and serve the people that are already a part of your community now in this moment, whether it's a restart or, today you're like, yes, I'm going to do it, then what are you going to do if you go viral? And what are you going to do if you have more of them? You're not going to be able to deliver on your own promise. And so that puts more stress. So if you're building systems and you stop worrying about or chasing the algorithm, because I firmly believe none of us are smart enough, even collectively, to break the algorithm. But figure out what that system is. Figure out your content pillars. I always talk about a third, a third, a third. Okay. So a third of your content, it can be educational. A third of your content can be inspirational or motivational. And a third of your content, that last third, dare I say, it could almost be more than a third if you wanted to, because it crosses over, is about you, your business, your product, your service. And that will help you batch the content with the reusability, in that design in mind, so that you can come into it knowing, oh, I don't need to show up every single day just pushing out content. I can take that very important 15 minutes that I do have today to engage and start conversations, because it is those conversations that we typically see drive that conversion rate. It's not about the selling. It's about showing up with intention and purpose. And if you take hopefully even just one tip that we've shared today, and it helps you reset either where you are right now in your, on the social media side of things, or you're dabbling into the notion of starting a new platform, hopefully I think that this will set you up with a little bit more success and a lot less burnout. Back over to you, Elizabeth, to close us out.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And we would, you know, I was talking to Richard the other day, and he and his wife quote me a lot when they're talking about social media. And I think it may be something I know it's something you and I have talked about, but um, if you can get to where you're just showing up for the one person, like we get overwhelmed thinking we're talking to the entire world. But no, just hone it down and say, I've got one person that I'm talking to today that needs to hear this, or that might find this helpful, or that needs to laugh, or something. It takes the pressure off of it being the entire world. So get out there, show up, make people smile, and bring the solution that you have found to other people. So we want to thank you all for joining us here on Cultivate Weekly. We host the show every Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Mountain. And we are so thankful that you are all here. Steph, do you have any parting words for us today? Now that my cup's empty.
Well, my cup is at least half full. So that's a good sign of a short work week. But again, guys, just showing up, give yourself some grace along the way. It will go far and keep you energized. And we want to invite you back here every Tuesday to join us on Cultivate Weekly. So cups up.
Cups up.